Hello everyone, welcome to Vajiram and Ravi's Terms in News. My name is Shubhangi Singh and today we are going to discuss some important terms that have been in news from the perspective of your exam. So let us begin with the first term that we are doing today, that is tidal flooding. The reason tidal flooding has been in news because Kerala has gone ahead and declared this particular phenomena, that is tidal flooding, as a state-specific disaster. Because in this particular state, this event was a recurrent event and this used to happen especially during new moons. So to address it in a better manner, this has been specified as a state-specific disaster. So let us move to understand that what exactly is tidal flooding. Some of you might be able to understand from the name itself, tidal flooding is something that you get to see temporarily and usually it happens in a dry coastal land. So let's just say this is the coastal land which is dry, but because of the high tide, water enters this region and there is temporary flooding which occurs. Now when we are talking about high tides itself, it will happen during the phases of full moon or new moon, and that is why we get to see temporary flooding or tidal flooding usually during this particular period. So it is very much associated with high tides and this has nothing to do with any sort of storm events. So when we are talking about key characteristics, tidal flooding is also commonly known as sunny day flooding or nuisance flooding, highlighting that has nothing to do with storm event, and it occurs mostly because of sea level rise or land subsidence. So if we are talking about this being the land and the water level increases, there might be temporary flooding. That could be because of high tide. If there is land subsidence, and it also takes place because of gravitational tidal forces. Now when we are talking about tidal flooding here, it is also important for us to understand that this is, yes, a regular and predictable phenomena very closely tied with high tides, and that is why it is something that can be managed in terms of a natural disaster. And that is why it indicates that we have long-term climate vulnerability also, which brings in the perspective of sea level rise, which can further enhance this disaster's frequency. So from this perspective, you have to also look into the dimension around the infrastructure damage that it causes. Furthermore, the salinization of groundwater takes place and what kind of urban drainage stress it creates. So tidal flooding is also very closely associated to these dimensions. You can read into that. Now we will be moving to the next term that we are covering today, and that particular term is public trust doctrine. Now public trust doctrine has been in news because Andhra Pradesh High Court has gone ahead and clarified that the river banks also constitute an integral part of the water body, and if there is any encroachment on these banks, this violates public trust doctrine. So for this we have to understand what is public trust doctrine. Public trust doctrine is a legal principle. Now when we are talking about this legal principle, it says that there are certain natural resources, air, water, forest, which are held by, which are in the custody of the state, but it is in trust that they will be used for public only, and the state cannot transfer that in private hands. So it is left with the states so as to ensure that it will be used for public good, public advantage, and it would not be given into private ownership hands, which might focus only on profits, not towards public good. Now the examples here are air, water, forest, rivers, etc. And this is a doctrine which places state as a, if you have to understand it through example, state is like a trustee of that particular place, but the beneficiaries are constant, that is citizens. So the resources, as I said, are included are air, water, river, and also forests as well as coastlines. If we talk from the Indian polity context, they have been directly derived from Article 21, which ensures fundamental right to life, and this was clearly recognized in MC Mehta versus Kamal Nath case of 1997. So becomes very important from the perspective of exam. Now moving to the next term that we are covering today is Quorum Sensing. Now this is related to science and tech, and recently a family of linear plasmid figs have detected that quorum sensing and auto-inducer, they exist in multiple bacteria species. So in order to understand this news, we have to first understand what exactly is quorum sensing. So when we are talking about quorum sensing and auto-inducer, first we get to know that quorum sensing is nothing but a means of communication. But this communication does not exist between animals, humans, rather this is something which is associated to cell communication. Now, this is a cell-to-cell communication mechanism, and how this works: when bacteria release signaling molecules, and these molecules are called auto-inducers, and when the threshold is reached in terms of concentration of the all molecules that have been released, that is when gene activation takes place. So this is something we observe in bacteria, and when we are talking about quorum sensing, they are used by bacteria in order to coordinate a collective behavior across, and this is usually based on population density. So when we are talking about collective behavior amongst that particular population, that can be only done through gene activation, and that is induced through auto-inducers. When we talk about such a phenomena, you might ask, where do we get to see this in real life? We do get to see the consequences of this in our real life. If you have seen images where the waves are glittering, which we know by the name of bioluminescence. So this is one thing that controls bioluminescence, other including virulence factor, biofilm formation, and they are important because they can help us in targeting especially antivirulence therapies. Now when we are talking about antivirulence therapies, these are new type of therapies which focus on disarming the bacteria rather than killing the bacteria, and if this works out, this might be really helpful in addressing antimicrobial resistance, which is developing at the highest rate, not just across the world, most problematically, especially in India. So when we have done this, we will be moving towards the next term today that we are doing, that is fluorescent protein. Now fluorescent protein and quorum sensing are very correlated topics. When we are talking about fluorescent proteins, they also have been in news because proteins are being tweaked, they are being changed to quantum sensors, especially when we are talking about communication, especially that we get to see in body. Now when we are talking about fluorescent protein, it becomes of great advantage when we are looking towards medical innovation. Let us understand that. So when we are talking about fluorescent protein, basically it is nothing but a protein itself, but this protein is capable of absorbing light of a different wavelength and emitting light of another wavelength. Now you will say, how does that matter? If the protein is emitting and absorbing lights of different wavelength, it matters because it looks something like this, and that means it gives a clear visualization of the animal or human body. What biological processes are happening, that can be understood, and that is why understanding of fluorescent protein can be something greatly used not just in molecular biology but medical diagnostics, understanding the diagnosis, figuring out what is going wrong, and biotechnology research. As of now, if we are talking about fluorescent protein, it acts as a biological marker. It is something that is non-invasive but helps in cellular tracking what is happening in the cells, and it gives live cell imaging as well. Now on this note, we will be moving to the next term that we are covering today, that is ALARA philosophy. Now ALARA philosophy has come in news because US has decided to drop a very important and core radiation safety rule, and if we talk about this radiation safety rule, we have to understand that as the global reforms, especially related to nuclear powers, are coming to change, they are looking towards reform. This is where we get to see that US has decided we don't need radiation safety rules. And which important rule is that? That particular rule is ALARA philosophy. So when we talk about ALARA, what exactly? It is an acronym which says as low as reasonably achievable. Now why do we say as low as reasonably achievable? Because we are talking about radiation safety. Now, when we are saying ALARA, it is a principle which is used for radiation safety. That means we will be minimizing radiation exposure as much possible when we are trying to get technological and achieve medical objectives as well. So yes, whatever are the technological objectives, medical objectives, we should work towards them. But in that, we have to remember that we have to minimize the radiations as much possible. So the whole idea here is time should be minimized in terms of exposure, distance should be maximized in terms of exposure, and shielding should be appropriate and optimized. Now, ALARA philosophy is applicable to nuclear reactors, hospitals where X-rays and CT scans are present, and also research laboratories. So what US has done, US has removed this policy altogether from its directives and regulation. That means they are going away from long-standing safety practice as of now. Now we will be moving to the next topic that we are doing today, that is apprenticeship ecosystem. So when we are talking about apprenticeship ecosystem, it is in news because Niti Aayog has been calling of strengthening India's apprenticeship ecosystem, and they have already proposed incentives as well as a national mission to address this. So if we have to understand that what exactly is this, we have to look into the fact that it is nothing but a proper institutionalized framework which brings together education, which brings together industry training, and it also brings together regulatory mechanism with skills certifications so as to ensure that work-based learning is happening. So apprenticeship ecosystem is something that facilitates work-based learning from all the stakeholders and all the dimensions. So when we are talking about this ecosystem, it includes industry participation, training institutions, regulatory framework, and certification and assessment. So this is a model which is known as earn while learn model itself. It helps in reducing the skill match, especially in a country like India, where graduates, postgraduates, doctorates are increasing in number, but the skill remains highly mismatched for the job suitability. Other than that, this will also help in enhancing employability. Now that was the last term that we had to cover today. We'll keep coming with such sessions for you. That was all from my side. Thank you so much.